Bernie Sanders got a lot of credit from people like me and many people, young people, watching the debates for some of the points that he made, pointing out things that are incredibly important to the American people, the real problems that they're facing that don't get a lot of discussion in the mainstream media, and certainly not on the GOP side. But he's not being quoted ever since the debate for those things. He's being quoted for very specific things that fit the sort of centrist message coming out of the debate. So he got a lot of credit for his point about the emails, the damn emails. We don't want to hear any more about the damn emails for Hillary Clinton. And that is being played perhaps because it helps out Hillary's cause. But they're also cutting an important part out of that. So we're going to show you on MSNBC what they actually showed. And then afterward, we're going to show you what he actually said and the larger message that he was trying to make. So first, here's MSNBC.
Moments of the night was this exchange about Hillary Clinton's emails.
This committee is basically an arm of the Republican National Committee. It is a partisan vehicle, as admitted by the House Republican Majority Leader, Mr. McCarthy, to drive down my poll numbers. Big surprise. And that's what they have attempted to do. I am still standing. I am happy to be part of this debate, and I intend to keep talking about the issues that matter to the American people. But tonight, I want to talk not about my emails, but about what the American people want from the next president of the United States.
Let me say this. The Secretary is right. And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too. Me too.
You know, enough of the emails. Let's talk about the real issues facing America.
Well, that was like jumping over the net in a tennis game, wasn't it? To congratulate your opponent. Anyway.
So you saw a little flash there where they cut something out in the middle, perhaps an awkward pause. No, it was where he was making his actual point. And I mean, you're going to see that right now, and you're going to understand very quickly why mainstream news outlets did not want to include this section from his speaking.
But I think the Secretary is right. And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too. Me too.
You know? The middle class, Anderson, and let me say something about the media as well. I go around the country, talk to a whole lot of people. Middle class of this country is collapsing. We have 27 million people living in poverty. We have massive wealth and income inequality. Our trade policies have cost us millions of decent jobs. The American people want to know whether we're going to have a democracy or an oligarchy as a result of Citizens United. Enough of the emails. Let's talk about the real issues facing America.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you.
Weird that they cut that part out.
Well, what incentive do they have to keep that in? I mean, they have an incentive to take it out, and I love it. It's like get off it, get off it, get off it, get off it. Like if you are part of the media machine that ignores the very relevant issues that he mentioned there, that he listed there, of course you're going to want to cut that stuff out.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, you've got to love Bernie. I wish that he were more. I think he might be electable, but he's so lovable. He's just so damn lovable. You know, he's so authentic. And standing next to her, I watched this once, and then I went back and watched this debate again, and he's so likable. It's just like he makes. He's so authentic. Yes.
And he's direct. He doesn't, aside from on the gun issue, he doesn't try to hide what he really believes.
Right.
And he's consistent for decades. Probably he shouldn't have been that consistent for that long. It's actually a bit suspicious, but he has been.
I love
Why no change, Bernie? What the hell?
Seriously, dude.
I love his body language when he talks, too. Like he gets so animated while he's talking. I mean, and it kind of goes to show you that he might be a longtime politician, but he doesn't come off as one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like he doesn't do like that annoying. What's that thing that Obama does when he's speaking?
The thumb.
I cannot.
That's the Clinton thumb.
Who does this when they're speaking? It is not natural.
It's very.
There are actually breakdowns of why that developed. It's that you want to point, but that's aggressive.
Yeah.
So you do this instead.
So you do this, which is the most unnatural thing ever.
Yeah.
Clench the fist.
I like to do it in relationship arguments. I like to be presidential.
Gotta stick out the tongue. I mean, the thumb a little.
Or use both. Exactly. Give them everything they want. And so I think you pointed out, you made a very good point that they don't want, if it's the economic issues that they either aren't interested in talking about or require actual like journalism going out there talking to regular people, they're not interested in that. But they're also not interested in something that Cenk and I were talking about earlier this week, and that's for when money starts to flood into our political system through Citizens United, when we turn into an oligarchy, as he was saying in that video, the main beneficiary in the end is the rich and corporations. That's true. But for that to happen, they need to win the elections. And for them to win the elections, the money that flows in doesn't just go to people making bumper stickers and putting up flyers in libraries and college campuses. The vast majority of it goes to places like CNN to run political ads. And so that process of turning our country from a democracy into an oligarchy is incredibly profitable if you can put television commercials on. And I think that's the main reason they cut it out. They don't want people to realize that when the money floods in, it's going in part to Anderson Cooper's paycheck. And it's going to the people who run MSNBC and Fox News and CNN and everyone else who's paid to put those ads on. They have no interest in limiting money in politics if it would cut into their bottom line.
So to go along with this theme, there was a huge story yesterday, right? And that huge story was the new whistleblower, an anonymous whistleblower who shared very, very secret information about the U.S. drone program with reporters at The Intercept. And Jeremy Scahill was the lead reporter in that story. And I mean, we knew that the drone program was terrible, but we didn't really know the scope of how horrible it was, right? And so that was the very first story in our rundown yesterday. And we spent at least 20 minutes just focusing on that, right, in the first hour. And then later on in the show, sure, we talked about the lighter stuff, the Lamar Odom story. Those are stories too, and they should be in the rundown. But Jeremy Scahill spent the day calling out mainstream media for refusing to cover that story at all. You would think that the drone program would be the top news story on CNN, on, well, I don't know, maybe some of the newscasts on MSNBC did include it. But yeah, I mean, Anderson Cooper wasn't reporting about it yesterday. And if he did, it was a really short report compared to the longer discussion about Lamar Odom's drug abuse. And so it really depends on what you're watching, when you're watching it. If it's primetime, if it's Don Lemon needs to focus on these topics that are relevant to American citizens. The reason why American citizens necessarily don't care about our spying program and our drone program is because maybe they don't know exactly what our government's doing.
Right. And how could you not be held accountable? Because all of us know now. And this report, it also included that 90% of the people hit aren't actually the drone targets. So we're killing innocent civilians. We're assassinating innocent civilians across the world. And the fact that we don't care, I don't know if it's that we don't care or that we're just not as in tune to it because it's not our backyard per se. It's like it's somebody else's kid we're killing. It's not our own. So perhaps, you know, maybe the administration is right. And that's been the biggest disappointment for me watching Obama. It's that these horrible policies not only were carried out but ramped up, and it was such a disappointment. This classically illustrates that for me.
Yeah, you make a great point about why it is that perhaps it isn't salient for most people. And I think that the history of warfare, ever since there's been television cameras and media to show you what's going on and to make it clear what's actually happening, is a fight between those who want to continue with the war regardless of the casualty and those who want you to realize that, as you say, innocent people are dying. And in Vietnam, that's why they counted them amongst the enemies killed in action, even if they were just civilians. They don't want you to focus on the fact that they're civilians. And that's why people like Donald Trump and Ben Carson and others who routinely demonize all Muslims across the world and say that they're all suspect, that's why they're doing it, is so that you will look at a dead civilian killed by a drone strike and say, probably would have ended up being a terrorist or probably sympathized with the terrorist. It's to turn off the natural human instinct to say, that's an innocent child that shouldn't have died. It's to get you to instead look at that as a potential enemy of the country you live in. That's what makes it so insidious, I think.